All right, everybody, we are back on Play It Forward with Emilija Gasic, writer, director. The film today is The Wait, and Emilia was nominated by Sammy Sarzosa. Sarzosa, Sammy, thank you for nominating Emilia. Emilia, thank you for being on the show. I
Thank
appreciate
you for I'm
welcome.
sorry,
No,
I'm
no,
talking
no,
over
no
you.
problem. Thank you. Let's talk at the same time. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What's going on? Filmmaker, person, writer, director. Fill us in, please.
Yeah, I'm a writer-director originally, but I also do cinematography. So I work as a director of photography as well, and I shoot for other people. But my main, I want to say, what I really, really love doing is writing and directing. And I have written and directed a lot of short films. One of them is The Wait. And since last year, I've also made a feature film, my debut feature film essentially. So I'm kind of I guess, a feature film filmmaker at this point.
Awesome. The weight is beautifully shot, and
Thank you.
yeah, that's really, I mean, it was really nice. I don't think you did the photography on it, did you?
No, no, I don't usually do photography when I'm directing. I do believe in like working with other people and a filmmaking is a community, so I like having more people telling me, different ideas. I feel like that one person can only think of so much. And when you're a writer and director specifically, I feel like that's the whole world that
Oh
you
yeah, it's
create.
plenty. It's plenty, definitely, no
It's
doubt about
plenty
it.
for sure,
Yeah,
for
it
sure.
was shot really well, directed really well, written
Thank
very
you.
well. It came out great. Tell us a little bit about the movie, where it was shot, what it's about, and then we'll start with the three PIF questions.
Okay, yeah. So the short film is called The Wait. It is about a 7-year-old girl who, in post-war Yugoslavia, uncovers a whole world of extortion that involves her innocent father. And she essentially uses a small, like, microphone device, which is like a dictaphone, and records the sounds around her, her mother, her father, as well as her grandpa, and then she sort of pieces out the information about her dad's situation, who is dealing with extortion. So it's a story about adults told through a child's eyes, essentially. And it was shot in my grandparents' house in Serbia, where I'm originally from, in my hometown.
It's really cool location and definitely feels like it's shot in another country. What was the inspiration for making this film for you?
Well, this is, definitely there's a personal inspiration. I was a kid with a microphone, with a dictaphone, who was recording a lot of sounds. I didn't have any, this type of I didn't piece out any mystery with it. Unfortunately, I was mostly recording myself and like different sounds that I thought were interesting. But, growing up in like a country like ex-Yugoslavia at this point, it was a little bit of there was a lot of that unsettling, um, how can I explain that? Like you could feel that your parents, there was worry in the air. There's the uncertain atmosphere, and this type of thing was very familiar to me. And I just wanted to create a world where I can show what that feels like, if that makes sense, because the country was in the war in the early 90s, two different civil wars, and then there was the bombing in 1999. So throughout the whole 90s, it was quite tumultuous, especially if you're a child. Doesn't matter if you're near the conflict or not, you could definitely feel there was inflations, there was, not a lot of money at that time. People were really trying to find different ways to survive, and there was a higher crime rate, obviously, because of, as kind of the remnant of the war, with organized crime, and small businesses were targets. Essentially, anyone who had like some sort of independency from the country, they were targeted through different extortions. Like somebody would come in and ask you, "Oh, you need protection," but then you would say, "No, I don't have money to pay you." But that doesn't really matter. They will. You kind of have to come up with the money because this is how they would get that, essentially. So it's a little history
Yeah.
around that.
So, you growing up in a context like that and the character. growing up in a context like that. And essentially, just to kind of summarize it, it's post-war. There's still some traces of war. Um, and the economy is very poor, people are desperate, crime is on the rise. And in this particular household, there's a father and a mother, family being threatened for the safety of their daughter, and they're asking for a ransom or trying to extort some sort of funds, or they're going to hurt the young girl. Um, the young girl is in a home and she's not outside. She doesn't go outside because that would be scary. They can't control her outside, so they try to keep her very much under the watch of um, the parents. And the dad goes out and he takes matters into his own hands and becomes a vigilante. And there's scenes with a gun, and he's talking about going to fight the bad guys. How much the young girl knows, we're seemingly she's piecing together something. We don't know exactly what she knows, if it's her life that's in danger or not, but she knows there's danger. And there's a series of scenes where she's, trying to have a childhood within this context. So, you know, that being to a certain extent, I don't know how intense that was your childhood. I don't know how intense you experienced it, how close enough um, to make it an impression, certainly. But within, the context of this film and within the context of all circumstances where children are unable to live out a childhood, where they feel threatened by something. And in this case, this threat is external, coming in from social forces. Um, what happens to a child? It seems like this is very much this landscape that you're exploring. What happens to a child? Because within the context of this film, like we were talking earlier, it's kind of like a dream, and there's all these kind of impressions, and the child's very neutral. There's not, I mean, there's a scene where she's, holding the pistol, and she's, as a spectator, you don't know what can happen, it's a film, people go for the drama, anything. So, but even when she's holding the pistol and the games that she's playing, she's very expressionless. Um, she's just kind of going about the business within the same sort of expressionless environment that her parents also have to a great extent. Her father tries to be, uh, have some playfulness in him, but that's really the most emotional range that's there. The grandfather worries, the mother kind of watches television. Everybody's has like, very low range of expression. So based on that, what do you feel is the meaning in terms of how is a child affected by this as a child, and then what happens to such a child when she becomes an adult?
A loaded question. Yeah. So I mean I don't know, I can't really speak for everyone obviously, but in terms of this film, I think at the time when I was making this film, I was very much influenced by Robert Bresson, which is like a French filmmaker who always talked about having his actors do one thing so many times that it becomes almost mechanical to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
I know
I,
exactly what you're talking
yes.
about. Mhm.
So I read a lot of his interviews. I was really like, he's like one of the filmmakers that you will learn about film school. And this was my second year, I believe, at NYU to School of the Arts project. So I think as a film student, I was interested in that type of no, expressionless, almost like you remarked. It's very interesting. I haven't really spoken about this in a long time, and you may be one of the first people to note that. But there's definitely that influence. And I wanted the child to kind of be like the spectator, essentially. So we are, as we're watching the film, we're kind of this kid. We're trying to piece out the story to see what is actually happening. And I was interested in trying to create tension out of very little information. So there was a lot of stuff that I was, trying to put in a very short amount of time. And then in terms of how this child grows up, I don't know, maybe they make films about their childhood. I
Yeah.
always talk about with my fellow filmmakers, especially from Serbia. We were mentioning that there's a lot of films coming from Serbia about the 90s right now, and it's told all by the directors who are in their 30s. So they've just started remembering and making sense out of what exactly happened and how did that influence us. Even my feature film actually is connected to that, only from a different time period, but it's about a childhood. So it's interesting. I don't know if every artist goes through this phase. Um, Looking back, probably I don't see myself as any special in that way. Yeah.
I think it's a great answer, and I think you're spot on. It seems like, and it's really highlighted in the particular style and feeling that you explored, because there is not much meaning making for the child. She is in the observing
Mm-hmm.
experiential framework and watching things going on. And yet there will come a time to make meaning. There is a need to make meaning. She may be trying to make meaning. She's attempting. She's got the recorder, right?
Right.
There's a desire, but she's limited in the amount of meaning she can make. And um, I think to reflect, she's reflecting in the moment, and she will continue to reflect as an adult and to continue to try to make meaning of the historical context of her childhood is a critical process. And I think that is really the universal element
Yeah.
within which your film is taking place. Because irrespective of war, irrespective of an internal threat or internal meaning external meaning war or something like that, or internal threat where it's inside the home or inside the individual, there is a desire to and a need to reconcile it. And
Right.
one of the ways to reconcile it is to make meaning of it and to understand it and then,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, move beyond it. So I think that's really what, if we strip away all the pieces of the movie, strip away the historical context, strip away even the characters and the
Mm-hmm.
personal dynamics, what is left? And what's left is action, meaning in the external world, a witness, and then a desire to or a need to grow, mature, heal at some point by reconciling it. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that is reconcilable is that, because the history of it, and I think, it touches kind of how do you, and this is a greater question. There's one way to reconcile our own personal history within the context of the world. And then there is the question of how do you reconcile the world? Meaning, how do you reconcile something like war? Something like when people who are related to one another, people who are family, people who are and can engage in such atrocities and can engage in such um, horrible acts, right? How do you understand that as an adult, having come from a country that had a civil war?
That's a tough question too. Yeah, I don't know if we've learned that yet. I think with time, essentially, I think it's important to talk about things and not put them under the rug, which I think was a big part of our history, was putting things under the rug and not really dealing with them. I do think that's important to do. And I do think that with coming of new generations, there's the new refreshing look at everything. And this is something that I'm seeing now in today's society in Serbia, where people are supporting each other from the region. And I do think that's very, especially, once we were at war, but now they're supporting each other, especially the newer generations, the younger people. They're not interested in that. So I do think that it takes time and really effort to kind of talk about these things without pointing fingers, obviously, because a lot of things have happened, and I don't, things have to be admitted in order to move forward. But I do think that with help of the new generations who have nothing to do with that, who are more connected than anyone else was at the time. I think at the time you could even write something in the newspaper and you could even lie about things and people would think this is the truth. Today you have internet and it's much different way of communicating with one another, and before you think something, you can actually check if it's true or not, if that makes sense. So I do think that plays a big role in people really don't wanting to be at this place anymore. That happened. They want to move forward, and they're supporting people from the region. I don't know if that makes
Yeah,
any sense.
yeah, of course. What do you think is it that's amongst the young people today that they do not want to repeat, or they're able to forgive even and look beyond those differences that their parents could not?
I mean, I don't know exactly, but like you hope that every generation is better than the last one, and that it's actually learning from the mistakes of their parents, essentially. So there's that hope that everything, unless there's some sort of discontinuance, I'm not sure how to say it, but if you hope that if everything is going
This continuity.
forward,
Yeah.
there's some continuity. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Everybody keeps talking about how great Gen Z is, and I do think they are, because yeah, they are changing the world for the better, in my
Well, that's
opinion.
awesome. And it's like, well, why? Is it rock and roll? Is it art? What has been the voice that's heralded a unity within
Mm,
that context?
that's a good question. I don't know. Yeah.
But judging it yourself, judging as, by your own life,
Yeah.
what has motivated you to explore themes of reconciliation?
Uh, I mean, I don't know if this film is about war as much. Actually, it's more about a family, and like I said, untold stories. It's kind of what my theme is in general. Even if I look at all my short films and even my feature film, I do have this theme. I didn't find this, but like people who know me and who have seen my films, essentially, they've pointed out, oh, you're always interested like in a new angle or a story that's not very, that's not told, it's not common. It's kind of, if I were an influencer, my influencer friend told me that would be the unbeaten path or something. I'm not really sure. But so I wasn't specifically interested in the theme of war here. I was more interested in how it affects a child growing up. And I don't really give an answer, essentially, because we don't know what's going to happen. Like we know, we can sort of we piecing the puzzle where we know that the father is going to take the matters in his own hands. He may not come back, but we don't really know how it affects her. So it's unknown future again. Yeah.
Emilio, since making this film, how have you been personally changed?
Uh, I think it was a film that I wanted to make for a long time, because this house where I shot has always inspired me. So a lot of the short films that I did before this film, I wanted to make in this specific house, but because this house is not very near, it's in my hometown, which is a little farther away from where I was studying at the time. I was studying in Belgrade. So all my other films were filmed in houses that is similar to this one, but not that house. And this was like the first time I had the opportunity to shoot in my grandparents' house. And I think in that matter, it was very emotionally important to me because I do see this house as like a place full of memories, and I do connect it with my own childhood because this is where I grew up. So it was important to me to shoot something there because I always thought it looked like a museum stopped in time, essentially. So I do think that I felt some catharsis through the just by shooting there, if that makes sense.
So it sounds like you were changed in a way by engaging in a, I guess, mature adult state of your life and documenting this historical experience and seeing it from a new perspective. And
Yeah, that's actually really well put.
and what was the new perspective? How do you see it?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I haven't processed it yet. I think with me,
That's what we're
probably
doing.
takes.
That's the
Yeah,
point of
no,
the show.
that's what that. I'm trying to think. It's interesting. Like, I do feel like time needs to pass before I put things on paper. Even with my feature film, I've had the idea for like 13 years before I wrote it. And then with this short film as well, it was on my mind for many years before I wrote it. So I'm very slow in processing things,
Good.
clearly. So who knows? It's probably going to come.
Well, if you had to guess, right? So here you are, you're a kid, you lived in that house, now you're a adult, you're documenting it, and you're engaged in, this aspect of recreating a drama that you've had 6 years, you said? You were working on the short before you wrote it down. So,
Yeah, I didn't mention how many years.
oh, you didn't,
I
I'm
just had
sorry.
it for many
Oh,
years,
many
the
years,
short. Yeah,
many years.
yeah, yeah.
So now it's kind of crystallized. You had, and it's there, the moment it's happening. So what do you think, if you had to recall what it felt like shooting in the house and now having shot in the house of having executed on the vision that you had, what kind of sense do you feel? Have you been informed, maybe changed?
I mean, I can say more of an intuitive level,
Yeah.
where I used to dream a lot about this house. This house was always I don't I mean I my grandparents lived there. I didn't live there. I lived near, like right next door, but it was a big part of my childhood because my grandparents were there and I would spend a lot of time with them. For some reason, this house has always been in my subconscious. I don't know. I always found it like a special place, and I would dream a lot about it. Once I made this film and I've sort of kind of finished with that space, I haven't had any dreams, at least that I remember, about this place. If that makes sense. So maybe that's an answer to
I think
it.
that's a great answer. That's a great
Yeah.
answer. Yeah, that's a great answer. And the way I understand it, if you're curious, is
Yeah.
um, there's a shift. There's a shift between the child and an adult, and the child, um, and I think you set out what you intended to do, which is to make some sort of meaning of your childhood,
Yeah.
and you made it. You were able to look at it through the perspective of adults, and you were able to look at it through the perspective of understanding, okay, well, why were these adults behaving the way they were? And
Mm,
now you're in a place where you see as a more informed or objective witness, right? As a child, your lens is kind of small, but now it's wide, and you're seeing kind of from the mountain side, and it sounds like there have been things that have been reconciled in you.
for sure. I'm sure that's true.
Awesome. Emilia, thank you so much for being on the show. It's a great film. Everybody play it forward. Till next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amelia. All right. Bye.